Sumo Cyco are a Canadian rock band whose founding members, Matt and Skye, were kind enough to take the time out for this interview. This was done a few years ago as part of a research project, which ultimately led to the idea for this podcast, and I'm so grateful for their contribution and time. During our chat, we discussed the relationships between music and well-being, how music helps to connect and bring people together, mental and physiological responses to music, and self-exploration through music. They also talk about navigating the music industry and modern music culture as an independent band, being protective of their creative control and always aiming to be original, and lots more. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the interview.
Hello.
Hey guys, how you doing?
That's good. How are you doing, Harvey?
I'm good, thanks. How are you guys?
We're good. We're good.
How you doing? Everything's good?
Everything's good. Everything's good. Glad to see you guys have been doing really well as well.
Best we can without being able to tour. It's been an interesting, not a ride, but an interesting, I want to say ride, but we're not touring.
We're just staying still.
It's been an interesting growth for the past bunch of months while we're here in our house.
I think you just about managed to keep sane with all the projects you've been working on.
Oh, we're trying. Yeah. It's weird, like, for two people that are very used to being on the go all the time, being in a house. We have pretty strict lockdowns in Ontario still. So it's been very very lonely for being people that love being like constantly at shows, meeting people, and
we got music videos done. That's the main thing. We got a bunch of videos, so.
Oh, that's crazy. I'm still blown away how you're doing these videos on those kind of budgets.
It's just a lot of spit and grit and a lot of spit and grit.
Well, as a fan, I can say I appreciate it so much.
That's great.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
So I'll start with the first question on music and well-being. If I could just ask you both, when you think of those two words, music and well-being, what are the first things that come to your mind?
Well,
mine's importance. It's super, super important. I think that's the first thing that comes to my mind is for me, I think music can keep people very healthy. Like it keeps me sane. I don't know. What about you? Like for me, it's fulfilling. And it's something that I can go to if I feel empty to help fill something right now that I might be when I'm feeling empty.
Do you know what that something is by any chance? Do you know what it might be?
I don't want to use the word depression because I don't, but it feels in that place right now with what's going on that there's a lot of, I've had emptiness over the past a year and a half, and because we're not having the same kind of lifestyle, maybe I felt more depression than I've ever felt in my life. Before I never did. And I looked at music as just wellness, as in like I just enjoyed music. It always made me feel good. And now I feel like it's even more, I'm learning that it's therapeutic for me.
Yeah, well, music and well-being to me are very much tied. And I can remember a few moments in this past few months where I'll forget to even put on music. And then I'll do something where I'll just put on a record and immediately my day comes together where I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I was missing. That was the piece that it's almost too obvious that I didn't think of it, and I'll put on a record and then it's like, oh, that makes doing the dishes a lot easier. That makes doing the normal tasks. And I was actually talking to Matt about this yesterday, that I actually work and are more productive listening to music than I am in silence. In silence, it's almost like my brain has too much space to wander and to start thinking about other thoughts and going off on tangents and thinking about the past. But when I have music going on in the background, if there's ever spaces in between what I'm working on, my brain just falls into that oh yeah, that's a cool beat, or I'm singing along to the lyrics, and it helps me just get through the work that I need to do or daily tasks without as much anguish.
It makes me a better person when I listen to music. I live life. If you were looking at life in general, when I have music playing, it's in my head or whatever it is, everything seems to be, I'm more optimistic towards everything when I feel like I have some kind of music or something in my head while I'm doing it.
Yeah, and I think it's a self-care act to take the time to put on music or to put on something that while you're doing something else. Just the fact that I have to remind myself sometimes it's okay to take a break when I'm rushing through orders from the store, and I'm like, just take 2 seconds to get a drink, do some self-care things, like put on some music, like it'll make the whole scenario feel less stressful when you're kind of like, you know, there's a nice scented candle burning, those little things. And music is one of those things that I feel like enriches the experience for me.
I feel like that's why you see people use, like in an average day jobs, people, whatever they're working, especially I've worked jobs where I'm in a communal place where there's a lot of us and there's a radio playing, and it really, the sense of morale around the people that are working while the music's on is completely different when it's off. Like you can feel it. And I think there's just something about it. I wish I could put my complete nose on it, or like finger on it, but it's definitely something that hits us emotionally.
Yeah. So often when we talk about music, we reach this point where we don't have the words to really explain or describe something. And this is exactly the thing that I want to try and help us understand a bit more. And if there's not a word, I'll invent one, and then we'll be able to talk about it.
That's cool. I like it.
Awesome.
I like that. It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, like, you know, Matt and I always talk about how, you know, just because we're big into film, how music can change so much, like the feeling of a scene, or the feeling just by putting on that different music. It like literally makes it sound professional or not, if there's like a crappy soundtrack.
Like, think about it. You could be watching a film without the soundtrack and nothing will hit you unless the music's there, and the right music, right? You know, you won't have somebody dying or whatever this passionate scene is, and then they're going to be playing like some death metal song behind it. Like everything connects to whatever that tone or that sonic thing had to happen in that area, that music that had to happen for this. And it's really, Skye hits it right on the head. If you try to watch any movie that you think has passion or huge epic emotion in it, and then take that music out and watch how it almost starts to make you laugh, you can't connect to it the same way. It's huge.
Yeah, it really does. And Matt recently, on a side note, he got me this old like antique piano, and for me, like, I always bugged him because I didn't like, and I wasn't drawn to playing a keyboard as much as I was when I could hear the resonance of the strings and just go to the piano, and it just automatically, it feels like it works, and I can feel the vibration versus like kind of hitting like a plastic key that doesn't have the same, like I don't feel the string actually vibrating. And like I felt, now that I've been playing it for like a few months now, like 6 months,
I can't watch TV anymore.
It's something that
I'm just joking.
It's something that I'll do like first thing in the morning, or, you know, when it gets late at night, that literally is like a calming effect. And I wonder if there is like any evidence about the difference between like the fact that it's actually a vibration that I'm feeling versus like if I had to play, you know, a MIDI keyboard that doesn't have the actual like vibration hitting me, where you're kind of listening through and then through headphones.
That's also a good one that you just brought up. The fact that it is sound waves, it's waves, it's a waveform music. That's something to think about, it, how it,
definitely.
A waveform, we don't see it, but it's going into our body.
We feel it,
yeah. That's good to look at you, Mrs. Science.
Yeah, the vibration, like, because like if you hang a tuning fork and there's another tuning fork in the room at that same pitch, it'll start vibrating as well.
Right.
So because of the vibration, you don't know that? That's how the vibration works of the tone. So
the waves going out, because it's the exact same frequency, it hits this
other
tuning fork, even though they haven't touched, and it will just start to vibrate to the frequency. Whoa.
So that's like one of the cool things that vibration can do. Like, it's a very powerful thing. And that's why a lot of people, you know, use the term we're vibrating at the same frequency, when you kind of like get along with somebody where you're not, it kind of like clicks, because your frequency is literally like buzzing, and it's like you can almost like feel that kind of.
We need to write a song called "What's Your Frequency." I'm not joking.
I think you're gonna have to.
Oh, we're gonna have to write "What's Your Frequency."
Yeah, so like that's something that like I always thought it was like magic, right? Because you can't see that waveform, but using a tuning fork, it can tune in to that same frequency and then vibrate without you even hitting it, right? So that's like what that. You know, I'm not a scientist, but that stuff is like, to me, there's got to be something more that, you know, how that vibration is working with the tuning forks. Like,
I can hear the song
what's going on there, you know?
Matt, you better get a pen quickly.
I got it.
Yeah. So I think that there is something about resonance. Like when I was in singing lessons, one of the exercises I did was I sang facing a wall, so that there was a wall like right in front of me, so that I could literally help learn how to hit certain notes or feel the way that a note would hit certain parts of my mouth and my face and my jaw to create the right resonance and the right what other words can I use? Resonance, frequency, vibration. And when you feel it actually hitting the wall and coming back to you, it's just like it amplifies that feeling to help me understand, like, oh, when I sing with my tongue doing this, it creates this frequency here and this frequency. And my teacher would always tell me that you can hear your frequencies and feel the vibrations better when you sing, like, and have it reflect. The sound just bounces right back at you. And that was one of the techniques I used when I was in singing lessons.
Do you think goosebumps is our skin at the right frequency of the certain thing in the music? So when the music hits our skin raises goosebumps.
I think it probably has something to do with your brain processing it first.
We get goosebumps. I get goosebumps when something is perfect in music, where it like blows my mind. It like does it to me where I'm just like, my body instantly shows me just how it's hitting me instantly. I get, woo, that's amazing.
I know what you mean. There's that, every so often you'll hear a perfect song. I don't think it's very often either, but every so often.
And sometimes it's not even the whole song. It's like a part in a song. Something will happen and I'll go, whoa,
that harmony.
Look at that. Like, I'm doing it right now. I'm getting them right now just talking about it. I'm exciting myself. That's awesome. Cool.
Yeah, but it is, I think that's, for me, it really is like when you get a harmony right, like especially vocally, where you're really matching the wave, but at like the way that, I don't know how much how technical I can get here, but like when you're singing a harmony, right, like you have your interval, like whether it's a third or a fifth, and sometimes that moves around, but when you hit it perfectly and both of them are moving succinctly in pitch together, it creates this like super amazing harmony that sometimes when I nail that, that's when it gives me the goosebumps, is when it's like, oh, there it is. That's like the magic, like it creates more of a mood because you're creating a chord with your voice, and also the fact that you're tuning into that perfect pitch to try to match what you've done before. So
do you feel that in the moment, or do you notice it maybe in a recording? Or
yeah, the one thing that's really interesting, I do hear it in the recording, but the one thing that I remember the first time I ever recorded vocals, the idea of singing outward, like, which I did tons of times in my youth, was like a whole new experience when I was singing on a mic and could hear my voice through the headphones. It's like, I don't know if you remember the first time that you ever experienced that.
I hate hearing my own voice.
But I remember the difference of hearing yourself, like just projecting out and kind of hearing your voice in the room, and hearing the recorded version through the headphones was like a really like kind of trippy feeling. And I remember just being like, whoa, this is awesome. And I remember from that moment on, it didn't take me much to be like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, because it was just this really cool thing about feeling the immediate like changes and subtleties that I was doing to my voice like come right back. And I just really enjoyed that.
That's so cool.
But that's more of like a personal thing as a vocalist, not as much as just like a listener. But
yeah,
there's lots of nuance to
so
that
interesting
there, Harvey.
I've got a feeling this could go on for hours, but I'll try and keep it short. So yeah, this kind of leads me on to another thing, or kind of ties into it. Have you guys ever seen or witnessed like effects on music on others as well as yourselves, but don't quite understand what is really happening? So I always imagine this, what's it like from your guys' perspective when you see us in the crowd and you can see, the look on our faces being all wide-eyed, or when you see all this synergy, especially, when you jump down and we're all singing and dancing together. Again, it comes back to that thing, we can't quite put our finger on it, but there's something happening here. Is there anything that you're left with after that you really want to understand a bit more?
I mean, for me, those are like the most magical moments in my life, is when I feel like, someone that I don't even know, that I'm just seeing in the crowd, as like that passionate like face of just like singing along and loving the moment as it's passing, and keeping up with us. And I think that kind of ties back to how I kind of feel when the energy in a concert to me is like everyone's vibrating at that frequency, right? Like everyone is in the same movements together. They're all moving, their bodies are moving to the same motion, you know, things like that are powerful.
Exactly. And because we've played shows where people are not all vibrating at the same frequency as well. And it feels completely different. There's this whole other vibe of when you're playing or you're trying to connect with people that don't know you or don't understand your sound yet, or and there's a different vibe and you can see it. You're literally trying to get them on the frequency that you want.
It is almost like you can feel the walls up, like the personal walls people have up that they haven't quite let their guard down yet. And then you can kind of feel when people drop their guard and they're just like in the moment with you, enjoying.
And we know some songs where we're like, that song does not work. It doesn't seem to get through as well. And then there's other songs where we're like, something about what we've created here connects with people better. And we run with those ones the most we can. And Skye has a whole vibration, her own self, if you notice. It's not just the music. We have a lot of fun things that try to bring people and make people have camaraderie. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Together. Like, and I think that music in general is supposed to do that to people. Like back, you know, from the beginning of time, everybody at one point probably sat around a campfire and liked to sing together. And I think it is
how
a bonding
in war
experience.
They have like the drums, you know, you always see them like to make everyone feel like they're at the same rhythm working together. Like it is a teamwork type of
it builds
thing.
Community.
It builds a feeling of togetherness when everyone's like, you know, nodding to the same beat.
Think about when when a hit song comes out, you know, some huge hit song hits and it goes across the country, and whether we get sick of it or not, everybody starts to like it. You know, it's always getting turned up on the radio. You're always seeing everybody bouncing, and there's this connection when you get it right.
Do you remember one of the shows, Matt and I, when we toured with Britney Spears, they would sometimes have a DJ that would come out on stage before the whole show started and just like spin tracks.
Tuning them up.
And then, you know, like Bohemian Rhapsody would come on, and then one person would start singing, and then it would catch fire, and the next person would start singing. And then next thing you know, the whole arena is just singing louder than the speakers.
And it doesn't just become the music, it becomes this like emotional
and you're looking, you're smiling at everybody across the room being like, I know that line too. And you're like, you feel that connection because
with complete strangers as well, like you were saying.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, oh, of course, this track, you know.
But at that moment, that we were like that. When we played Download, there was a tent party where we played the acoustic tent party, and after that, there's friends of ours were DJing, and I just felt like everybody in that room was just listening to tune after tune, and every tune was great, and the connection while everybody's just dancing, enjoying themselves. There's this extra something, even if I don't know the person, I feel like we're brothers at that moment, or sisters at that moment, you know.
And also, like, you know, as we're talking about all these memories we have as well, it brings me on to the next thing, which is like the music we listen to is like the soundtrack to our life. I've been asking a lot of people, has the music that you listen to or that you create, has that made you realize anything about yourself that you maybe weren't aware of, you know, in a few years ago or anything like that? Or progressively, does it make you understand yourself a bit more?
100%. One of my main, when people ask me about lyrics, I always say my lyrics make more sense to me, like, after the whole record's done and completed than they do when I'm writing them, because it's almost like when I write, sometimes it's like a stream of consciousness, especially when I'm trying to be more like poetic or obscure with the lyrics. And I kind of don't know why my brain is associating certain words together. Like, you know, where I'll come up with just like some type of analogy in my mind. And I'm like, what do I mean when I'm saying my heart's awake? And I don't know what that means at that time. But then when you kind of look back at the writing after, and you're like, whoa, I was going through that, you know, that thing in my life, and that's why I probably wrote about that, or I was feeling more depressed at that time, and that's probably why that came out. So I think I always kind of talk about my lyrics as not only being, you know, messages of empowerment and, you know, hidden within the chaos, but it's also kind of like a message to myself to kind of, I'm processing and telling myself while I'm writing a song about being strong, to be strong. Like the process of writing the song is actually helping me be what I'm writing, aspiring to be. And so I think that that's, you know, partially why music is such an important part of us as artists and musicians being able to process the world, is that it's almost like, you know, some people sit down at the end of the day and they write in their diary, or some people need to talk to their friend about everything that happened in the day. Like for me, it's just like I need to write a song about it. And another thing I wanted to touch on when you say music being the soundtrack to our lives is one thing I've found more recently than ever is how much nostalgia plays such a huge part in what music we love. Because I know that more than ever this year, I felt that because of the fact that I wrote my pop albums about 15 years ago, those people that were like really at an impressionable age when they heard that music are now, you know, in their like early 20s and you know, in their mid 20s, and they're posting about it on social media more than I've seen in the last like 10 years, because it's starting to feel like that nostalgia feeling of hearing those songs is bringing them back to like their childhood or their early teens when that song like meant something to them. And I've been listening to the band The Cranberries recently because that was one of the bands that my dad played around the house a lot, and it's been bringing me back just like to those feelings of like, you know, just like being chill at home and everything's good in life. And you know, and it could have been any song that was played, but because those songs were, you know, of that era and played when I was in a, you know, a good space, it always will bring me back there. And I think that plays a huge part in music, and why, you know, there's so many bands that do reunion tours and people just love that stuff, because it reminds them of certain parts in their lives and when they were most impressionable. And
that's really cool.
And Matt, do you feel like the music that you listen to, does that tell you anything about yourself, do you think, or has it helped you realize anything about yourself?
I don't know. Oh man, that's a hard question for me. I love music. It's absolutely my favorite, biggest passion in the world. And I'm very picky about what I love and why I love it. And I have music that I still listen to that I listened to when I was like 14. And then I'm checking out new stuff all the time. What I learned about 20 years ago, not recently, is that like the worst thing or at least for me, is I don't like to be influenced too heavily by music, like to write music. And it's something that's always stuck with me. And only in the past, so for like 20 years, I did everything I could to stay out of the box, where I was like, I don't want to even pay attention to what's going on sometimes. I know what's out there, I know what's big, but I really just want to, whatever comes out of here, instead of try to do this is big right now, so we got to kind of do this. And that's kind of why we're a bit of a strange band in the first place. But like this year, the past 2 years, I feel like I've started doing that because of all this online saturation and being in COVID. It's like I'm seeing so much thrown at me. It's the first time I'm questioning myself as an artist, if I even know what I'm doing anymore, because so much is saturated out there. There's so much out there now, and so many bands that, whether we like it or not, are trying to find success, and they're all like using this template right now. I feel like is everybody should, but it also really mentally puts strain on me. And I feel like what I'm learning is even more I want to try and pay less attention to what's going on if I want to create true awesome songs that I feel that I'm not just backing because I'm trying to get somewhere, but I'm backing because I fucking love them. It's really important for me to try and sound like other people, or get too into what else is going on. Even though I know, you know, Bring Me the Horizon's killing it here, this band's killing it there, all these things you can hear. You can hear when a band gets big and how other bands just start kind of comes there. And I mean, we're the same. I'm like, I know breakdowns are big. We got to put a breakdown in. We get it, but it freaks me out. If you're asking me how my brain works, I mentally get really stressed. I get anxiety when I try to write something that's so different. And it gives me anxiety because I want to write like that, but I know you're not. The rules of trying to create success right now means you're supposed to, even on Spotify, you know, if you try to, Spotify has playlists that if you listen to the playlist, all the songs are almost the same tempo.
They sound the same. I hate that.
This shit gets in your head when you're like trying to run a business, but create art that you fucking love. you know, like that you really believe in, whether somebody likes it or not. And that can emotionally get to me.
I can imagine, definitely, as an artist. Yeah. I think that was, I've seen a few other fans say it as well, and it was one of my kind of trepidations when you guys, got the label deal. And I think a lot of us are worried about, creative control and all these things. And, I don't think anyone doesn't know of a story of, some band or some group that signs with a label, and then the label says, well, we want you to do this now. And I can imagine, like you're saying, that kind of brings in that strain, like you're saying, the artistic integrity that each individual person has. You don't want to compromise that for anything at all. So I can imagine how hard it is to deal with that.
And from the standpoint of signing to Napalm, that's actually what was amazing about Napalm, is they didn't tell us what to do. We built this, what we wanted to build. If I was Napalm, I would have told us to give them the most metal tip, record that we can produce for
their fans,
for their fan base, for their kind of people that are looking for. We sort of alienated ourselves in some ways going with Napalm, because we were down with the fact that they were like, we love your cartoony stuff, we love what you're doing. On the other hand, we're going after like people that are listening to like, gent metal and all this power metal and all these heavy bands.
Hailstorm.
So there was a bit of an alienation that really went through my head even when I was doing this. But Napalm's been nothing but amazing and supportive. And it's also, but that's, this is beyond business. This is still an emotional roller coaster, though, to work against the grain. It's always hard when you're
I think there is definitely 100% more pressure that we put on ourselves to try to navigate the business than any label or manager is putting on us. I think for us, we realize that, I've been grown up from like 12 years old, learning the craft of songwriting. I actually had songwriting lessons. I've worked with so many different writers in my career. And the one thing that always stayed consistent when you are trying to work with these people is everyone wants the hit, right? Everyone wants to be the person you work with that creates the hit. And the hit has to be like 3 minutes and 30 seconds. You have to reach the chorus within 30 seconds. There has to be hook after hook after hook. The format has to be like intro, probably the chorus at the beginning, then, usually 2 verses, some type of like, bridge or breakdown. And obvious. All that stuff is rules that I just take for granted because I've grown up with it. But sometimes I think about it, I'm like, this is ridiculous how we're writing music. Everyone's writing music in this format of like 2 verses, choruses here, like a lot of the time. I mean, there's some variations obviously with more progressive bands and things like that, but just for like, hit songs, quote unquote, there is definitely formulas that have been proven to work and that songwriters use over and over again, to try to build a chorus bigger. And, there's certain strategies that, just like everyone uses all the time in the music industry. And sometimes it's really interesting trying to write a song without thinking about those things.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I feel like I always try to write without thinking of those things, but they always get back in my head, and that's where we shape these ideas. But I think like when it comes to the questions of like how it personally does, mentally it affects me. Like I don't like trying to deal with what I'm supposed to write and how I'm supposed to create. And what the truth is the most authentic stuff is always the best. It's always the best. When it comes out and you're just like, man, this is so dope and I'm so happy with this. I always feel like there's so many times where I even question, like I'll be like, I think this is amazing. I'll hand it to somebody, and because they don't come back to me and aren't as excited as I am, maybe I'm wrong. And I'll question that. And later I'm always right. I'm always like, fuck, that person maybe didn't come to me and it gave me that excitement. But then I'll put the song out and I get so much great feedback that I feel stupid for not listening to my gut sooner. That happens to me a lot too. And I hate that shit.
Yeah, I think it is tough when you work in an industry where it's beyond just like a 9 to 5 where we can put away our music side of our lives and like chill at the end of the night. Like,
that's a big
we
one.
are, both in a band together. We live together. We think about the band all the time. All of our conversations are pretty much end up with talking about music or the band. It's our love, our true passion, our life, and it's what we do as a living. So there's a really tough struggle sometimes between what we should be doing business-wise or spending our time on. That's, kind of like the the underneath stuff, like dealing with social media and dealing with, you know, marketing ideas and that kind of stuff, and then trying to like put that aside and then just be the most like creative, you know, authentic people in the world. It's a struggle sometimes. And what's tough is when we're in different moods where I'm in like, okay, we got to get these things done, and Matt's just like, I just want to create, like, why can't I just create today? And I'm like, we've got all these things we have to do for the band, we have to do the photo shoot, we have to do this. And sometimes it can be stifling because you're like, I just want to let my heart just like bleed all over the place and just do my art. And there are things in this industry that it's tough to balance. So
do you guys still find like a time and space to do that though? Because I hate to, that is, it's such a heartbreaking thing to imagine that there's no outlet for that, especially for, you know, any kind of creative person.
Yeah, I mean, we still get to create. It's just that we're creating under, especially for the past little while, because of COVID and because of having to put the record out, we were creating under more pressure than usual, because we had 4 music videos. We were trying to launch them like in 4 months, and we were literally making them while we were releasing them. So that was a lot of pressure. So what happens is, instead of it just being creatively fun, where you're like, you're in this creative box where you're like, I love what we're doing, but I also have a bit of rules of trying to get this done faster, right? So there's a bit of pressure where I you know, there's times where we didn't have that before, where it was like, oh, we're really on our, right now we're in a space where, now that we've released the record and the videos are out, that Skye's thinking about, we're thinking about a couple other music videos, but we haven't put a hard deadline so that it won't emotionally, or it won't drain us until we get the idea right. And I don't see the point of us trying to break ourselves to the point where we don't like doing it. If we've talked about that, I'm like, man, we're frustrated with how much it's you just burn yourself out almost when you're creating all this stuff by yourself. And now I'm just like sick of music videos. So I'm like, I want to go back into the studio and just record music right now. And it's not that we don't have the time, but it's hard when you know in the back of your head you should be getting the music video done. So it's hard to get in there and be like, oh, I can't wait to write some new riffs when I know we should be getting this done for the band as well. So there is this balance trying to do it, most of it by ourselves. It's not easy, but we find time. I've got tons of new riffs, so we're still writing like crazy. I just got to try and piece all this. I just got to piece all this stuff together when I get a little more time.
Yeah, and I think that ties in a little bit to the idea of when we first started this band, we kind of didn't want to do an album because we liked the idea of writing a song. You're super stoked on the song. You just finished it. You do a video and you show it to everyone while you're excited about it, while it's still fresh out of the oven. You're so excited to show people. And when you write a record, especially when you have something like, you know, all these, you know, release plans sometimes need like 6 months in advance for you to have the record finished and in their hands before it can even see the light of day.
I don't like that concept.
And you're like, well, and then you're like
6 months later, I don't even like these songs anymore.
and you're like, you know, some of the songs we've worked on for years before they get to see, before, you know, they get released and before fans get to hear them. And to us, our brains are already moving on to like the next thing. And so I see why like the whole like just like drop in singles and EPs have like worked for a lot of pop
that's
artists.
how we did it before we started doing the records, and it worked fine for us for a while. Now we're happy doing the records, but we've already sat and said the same thing where we're like, man, we could get back into this thing where we're doing like an EP, 6 songs, 3 videos, 1 year, and we can do it again the next and not probably feel as pressured and take as long, and we be excited about our music, you know. I think one of the biggest thing is when we're running the business, or how music hits you or not, is mentally, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, you've already fucking failed. And that's one of those things that we have always been really good at, enjoying what we've done. And this year, because of COVID, it's been the first year, even with a record out, that we feel like we're on the fence of like loving it and hating it at the same time. It's been a confusing time for us because we want to get out there and play these songs. That's that's the reason why we make the record. I don't make the record. I really don't make the record. So it's like,
we can listen to it.
We can listen to fucking it. I've listened to it twice since it got out, right? Like, I literally want to go out and play these things and have that connection with you in person, and that's what we're really missing right now.
Yeah, I think it brings a new life to a song. Like, when we perform it live, it brings a new energy. It makes me fall in love with the song in a different way than I have before. It gives a new energy. It lets me feed off the fans' energy too, which helps me like, you know, really enjoy the process and not feel like, you know, it can get monotonous when you play the same songs or the same set over and over again. And I specifically remember in my pop career, because usually the performances weren't even full sets. It was like 2 songs. I'd be going out and performing 2 songs here, the next night another 2 songs. And that's when I started like just like hating the songs, because it didn't feel like I was connecting with the fans in the same way, especially because there was a younger audience and, you know, they were usually distracted and not like super into it. But you know, when we would like
No,
play,
I was joking.
when we would like play, you know, people always ask like, oh, what do you like better, like arena shows or club shows? And I'm like, club shows all the way. I'm not saying I don't like want to play an arena, but the connection that you have with people when you're in a tighter space is so much more powerful than when you're looking at a mom like scolding her child while you're trying to sing to a crowd. And like in an arena, it's just like there's too much going on and people are in their own worlds and they're not really all on the same wavelength. They're not like vibrating together. It's like sometimes they are. When you get
to say, it depends. We played some big shows and they're all vibrating.
When you get
when
you're the main act, I think they all start to vibrate. But when you're the opening act,
at the screen like you're angry at the screen right now.
When you're the opening act, you're really fighting for attention, because a lot of them are using that time to get their drinks and get their popcorn and get like ready and settled down. So that's where it's more of a struggle to be like, hey, I'm over here, guys.
Well, I'll tell you, you did that great for me, because it was, I think it was, when was the CKY tour? 2017, I think it was.
Probably, that makes sense, yeah,
and that was the first time. I remember being in the queue in Manchester, and there was a guy there, and he said to me, "Oh, have you heard of them?" I was like, "I've never heard of Sumo Cyco." He goes, "You'll be a massive fan of them after this." And that straight away, I thought every single person I've been in the queue with says that about the supporting act. So I was like, I didn't know what to expect. You guys came out and just like the energy that you guys had to immediately get a ticket to see you guys again the next night in Liverpool.
Awesome.
And
Thank you.
it was just amazing.
That's amazing.
Thanks so much, Harvey. That's so nice.
And that was the CKY tour?
Yeah.
I know, I see it back there. Have you been out since then?
I think so. That was the first one. I think I've seen you guys 6 times, I think.
Oh, that's awesome.
But what was the other thing I was going to say? Also, going back to the venue sizes, the last one I saw you guys was Leicester.
Cool.
And that was just crazy, because that was one of the very last minute gigs that was put in before you guys went back. And it was such a long year. You did so many tour dates that year. I mean, I don't even think you needed a microphone on the stage. It was that close. And even it was my birthday that day, and you jumped down and you actually gave me a hug and said happy birthday to me. It was just
that's cool.
crazy. And going back to the soundtrack of the live thing, I want to just thank you guys personally for playing a part of the soundtrack to my life as well, because I can't imagine it without you now.
That's amazing. Thanks
so much, man.
Dude, that it hits pure. I appreciate
I will, I'm just conscious I don't want to take up too much of your time, but one of the last things I wanted to say was a big thing with this project is I want to help bring more appreciation to genres of music that in some cases I think people have unfair misconceptions of, especially what I've seen is hip hop music and rock music. You know, a lot of people aren't in them circles have very, very negative perceptions of them. And I think that just comes from a lack of understanding, and they don't appreciate what guys in these circles have to offer. You know, they've been at the concerts when I've heard people saying to you guys, you know, I was at this point in my life and your guys literally stopped me from doing this or that. And it just shows you how, like Matt, you said at the beginning, you know, how important music can be for us and help us managing our emotions and moods and things like that. And
you hit the nail on the head when you brought that up. We've been lucky enough to help people that have felt desperate and have thought about desperate situations in their lives. And our music, we have had quite a few emails of people that have helped. And that's something I should have led with right away, is when it comes to that's like the real truth of how something can really connect with somebody musically and help somebody. And that's something to bring up. And I'm proud of us as a band that we have that kind of music that we can create, or at least we care enough to kind of talk back and forth with those people. But I appreciate that you can understand that too, and that you can
absolutely
appreciate it.
Before we wrap up, I'm just going to go and grab someone. Just bear with me for like 10 seconds.
Okay.
So this is my niece, who's a massive fan of Skye's.
How are you doing?
Good. I don't know if you remember the video that I sent you with these 2 guys singing in the car. But they were
Yes,
singing-
I
They were
do.
singing Move Mountains.
That's awesome. That's so cool, guys, that you're rocking out to Sumo Cyco. That's awesome.
When she's older, I'll take you to the concert.
Yeah, 100%. We'd love to see you guys at a concert. We'll get you on.
This is the generation we're trying to
shoulders.
brainwash
This is the
into loving
generation.
us.
I'm helping you guys bring in this generation.
Thank you, Harvey.
Woo!
Seriously, girls, spread the words. Girls rock the best.
This is my mum who I'm doing the project with.
Hi.
So you got 3 generations here already.
That's so cool.
We're really honoured to have you part of this project. We're really, really honoured to have you. So thank you so much.
Oh,
no
we're
problem.
honored to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What a cool idea.
Even I'm singing them. Yeah,
That's awesome.
you're great.
Yeah,
You're fantastic.
we're honored to be a part of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for doing this as well. It means a lot. Thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah, we'll keep rocking out, guys. Thank you so much for showing such support. And yeah, we hope
we
you can get
definitely
to
will
the
do.
show one day.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
All right. Thanks, guys. I'll see you later. Thank you very much.
Bye,
Take
guys.
care.
Thank
Bye,
you so
Harvey.
much. See you, Harvey. Bye, girls.
Thank you for listening in, and I hope you enjoyed and gained something from this interview. If you found it interesting and know anyone else that would, please do share it with them. And thanks again to Skye and Matt for their time and great conversation and contribution to this project. Please do check them out in the links in the description.
What's happening?
He's gonna grab somebody.
Oh, okay.
Say hi, maybe.
Is it his lizard?
Oh, that is like a cage.
Yeah, there's like a big lizard or something in there, maybe? What is that right there? He's recording us doing this.
We're like, what is
We're
that?
like, wait, I can't.